Welcome back, viewers. You're watching Beyond World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Hem Kaur Suran. On the show today, in a trilateral summit at the White House between US President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and the Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Biden has asserted that the United States' defense commitment to the Pacific allies was ironclad in the face of an increasingly assertive China. We'll get you all the details of this on the show today.
Also on the show, of course, we will be bringing you the updates coming in from the US. Former American football star O.J. Simpson has died at the age of 76. O.J. Simpson, a former NFL star, was acquitted of the murder of his former wife, Nicole Brown, in 1995 in what was dubbed as the trial of the century. We'll bring you a background on how his life wound up in jail and then finally his death. All this and a lot more right here on World DNA. Let's get you started with the headlines.
US, Japan and the Philippines hold first ever trilateral summit where all three leaders signaling that many more meetings would follow in the years to come.
The United States defense commitments to Japan and to the Philippines are ironclad. The first ever leaders summit between the United States.
Biden says US support for Philippines-Japan defense is ironclad amid growing China provocations. US is expected to announce joint military efforts to push back on Beijing's stepped-up pressure on Manila in the disputed South China Sea.
Israel is wrapping up its war in Gaza but is also preparing for scenarios in other areas, says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu amid concerns that Iran is preparing to strike Israel in response for the killing of senior Iranian commanders.
Protesters gathered in Tel Aviv to continue to press the Israeli government and war cabinet to reach a deal with Hamas over the hostages, fearing that time is running out for the remaining ones who are still held in captivity in Gaza.
The Maldives tourism body announces that it will hold road shows across key Indian cities in an apparent bid to woo Indian tourists back.
Indian Army holds anti-tank guided missile drills at super high altitude areas of 17,000 feet in the northeastern state of Sikkim.
Pakistan is in discussions with the International Monetary Fund on a potential follow-up program to its 9-month, $3 billion standby arrangement. IMF chief asserts that it has important issues to solve.
'20 US Open champions Bryson DeChambeau holds a one-shot lead over world number one Scottie Scheffler after a weather-affected round one at the Masters. 27 players, including Tiger Woods, will have to finish their opening round today. China's military aggression and dominance in the Indo-Pacific region has brought together US, Japan and the Philippines.
Right. The White House, in fact, hosted the first trilateral meeting between the leaders of these nations. President Joe Biden gathered the Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida for a first-of-its-kind White House summit. And this was in a bid to show that they are in lockstep about countering China's military assertiveness. During the opening remarks, the US President declared the trilateral summit with Japan and the Philippines as a new era of partnership. Biden said that he was committed to deepening maritime security ties with the two allies.
Further adding that Washington's support for Manila and Tokyo is ironclad. Biden assured his allies that are worried about increasing assertiveness of China in the disputed waters.
President, Mr. Prime Minister, today we mark a historic moment, the first ever Leaders Summit between the United States, Japan, and the Philippines. And it's truly an honor to have you both here as we begin this new era of a partnership. The United States defense commitments to Japan and to the Philippines are ironclad. They're ironclad.
Now, the long simmering tensions between China and its neighbors took center stage. According to the White House, the leaders have agreed to step up military exercises, including plans for the Philippines and Japanese Coast Guard members to patrol aboard a U.S. Coast Guard vessel in the Indo-Pacific. The allies also plan to conduct more training exercises at sea.
Japan, the US, and the Philippines are maritime nations connected by the Pacific Ocean and are natural partners. We share fundamental values and principles and have supported regional economic development. In order to secure peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific, I hope to reaffirm our intention to further strengthen trilateral cooperation and to present the specific way forward through today's meeting.
Maritime security topped the summit agenda following a series of incidents, including Chinese Coast Guard ships firing water cannons just last month at a civilian Filipino boat. This comes as China claims almost the entire region of the South China Sea, including the maritime economic zones of neighboring nations. The second Thomas Shoal is within the Philippines' 320-kilometer exclusive economic zone.
Meanwhile, during the trilateral, Biden also announced that the three nations are launching a new economic corridor in the Philippines as part of the G7 Partnership for Global Infrastructure Investment. According to the American president, the economic corridor will help develop clean energy, port, agriculture and other projects in the country.
Stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific.
Now for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Listen to this.
U.S. President Joe Biden has reaffirmed the U.S.'s commitment to its Pacific allies, notably the Philippines and Japan, amid concerns about China's military actions in the Indo-Pacific region. He emphasized that the U.S. defense commitment is quote-unquote ironclad and that any attack on Philippine forces in the South China Sea would trigger the Mutual Defense Treaty between the two countries. This comes as China has been engaging in what some call gray zone harassment, including shining military-grade lasers and ramming into Philippine ships. The U.S. has been working to strengthen its alliance in the region with a focus on countering China's influence. The Trilateral Summit with Japan and the Philippines aims to send a message that China is the outlier in the neighborhood. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World This One.
Moving on now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Thursday that Israel is keeping up its war in Gaza but is also preparing for scenarios in other areas.
Well, Israel has been bracing for a possible Iranian retaliation for the killing of a senior Iranian general and 6 officers in a strike on the Iranian embassy compound in Damascus on Syria on the 1st of April. Now, Netanyahu said, and I'm going to quote him here, "Whoever harms us, we will harm them back. We are prepared to meet all of the security needs of the state of Israel, both defensively and offensively." Israel Chief Military Spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said that civilians were not being told to make any special preparations, but he added that Tel Aviv was highly prepared for a range of scenarios. Yoav Gallant told U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin a direct Iranian attack will require an appropriate Israeli response.
Now, Iran's UN mission said the imperative to punish the rogue regime might have been avoided had Security Council condemned the strike and brought perpetrators to justice. Earlier, an Iranian news agency published an Arabic report on the X platform saying the airspace over Tehran had been closed for military drills. But it then removed the report and denied it had issued such news. As per reports, Israeli Air Force held drills simulating strikes on Iranian soil.
The US, Russia, Germany and Britain urged countries in West Asia to show restraint. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock called on her Iranian counterpart Hossein Amir Abdullahian to urge maximum restraint to avoid further escalation. The German airline Lufthansa, one of only 2 Western carriers still flying to Tehran, extended a suspension of its flights to the Iranian capital. Russia's foreign ministry told citizens they should not travel to West Asia, especially to Israel, Lebanon and the the Palestinian territories, of course. British Foreign Minister David Cameron said on Thursday he had made clear to Amir Abdullahian that Iran should not draw West Asia into a wider conflict. US State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that Secretary of State Anthony Blinken called counterparts, including the Turkish, Chinese and Saudi foreign ministers, citing sources. Reports suggest that Tehran has signaled to the US that it will respond to Israel's attack on the Iranian embassy in Syria in a way that aims to avoid major escalation, and it will not act hastily.
So obviously we don't want this conflict to spread. We've been very clear about that. And we've been very clear that to Iran that we're not involved in the Damascus strike, right? We've been also very clear. I'm not going to get into public back and forth. We communicated to Iran that the U.S. had no involvement in the strike, as I just mentioned, that happened in Damascus. And we warned Iran not to use this attack as a pretext to escalate further in the region or attack U.S. facilities or personnel.
Now, United States said that it had restricted its employees in Israel and their family members from personal travel outside the greater Tel Aviv, Jerusalem and Beersheba areas. The fighting in Gaza, now in its 7th month, has overshadowed the increasingly tense situation further north.
Israeli troops have engaged in daily exchanges of fire with Hezbollah militia fighters across the border in Lebanon. Now, on Thursday, the military said that Israeli jets hit Hezbollah military targets in the areas of Mes al-Jabal, Yarin and Qiyam. They also targeted a Hezbollah observation post in the area of Marwahin and another compound in Al-Dahira in southern Lebanon. The Iranian-backed militias thought to have a large arsenal of missiles.
It has long been considered to be one of the most likely forces that Tehran could use against Israel, but so far both sides have held back from a full-scale confrontation.
Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh and his group said that his group Hamas is still seeking a deal for a ceasefire and hostage release after an Israeli strike killed 3 of his sons in Gaza. Speaking in Qatar while receiving condolences, Haniyeh said the interests of the Palestinian people are placed above everything. He told news agencies that we are seeking to reach a deal, but the occupation is still procrastinating and evading a response to the demands.
Moving on, now Ukraine is desperate for manpower in its military as Russia steps up its attacks 2 years into the war.
Now, in order to address the problem, Ukraine's parliament passed the mobilization bill that seeks to overhaul how civilians are drafted into army ranks. Now, what this means is that men between the ages 18 and 60 will have to update their personal data with the military authorities, allowing draft officers to easily call them up in any given region. Those of military age would be legally required at all times to carry the registration document. After being mobilized, the bill proposes that all men must undergo compulsory training before being sent to a combat region, while martial law lets draft officers call up men over 27 to fight. A separate measure was signed into law last week by President Zelensky, lowering the minimum age to 25.
Now, the reality of the situation on the battlefield was echoed in parliament by a top Ukrainian general who claimed that the Russian forces have outnumbered Ukrainian troops on the eastern front.
The enemy outnumbers us by 7 to 10 times. We lack manpower. Pass this law and the armed forces will not let you down. Not only you, but the entire people of Ukraine.
While the mobilization bill, which was passed with a majority of 283 votes in the 450-member parliament, seeks to give the country's military fresh manpower to address shortages, not all Ukrainians are happy. The move has angered relatives of soldiers who gathered near the parliament to protest the passage of the bill. Protesters claim that the mobilization bill does not set any time limit for wartime military service.
Вимагаємо чітких термінів служби. Вимагаємо.
Звичайно, це відчай, розчарування Of course, I feel despair and disappointment. I know our relatives didn't doubt for a second whether to risk their lives for their country, but the government has been dragging this legislation vote for months. I'm under the impression that no one was even planning to replace the soldiers. Instead of gratitude, their rights are being diminished.
Our boys and girls in the service are very tired. They have been fighting for 2 years and no one is planning to replace them. For rotation to happen, newcomers have to know how much time they'll have to spend at the front line. Undefined mobilization terms mean fighting forever. Without strictly defined terms, no one will join the army.
As Ukraine tries to infuse new blood to replenish its tired troops on the battlefront, the bill will have to be signed by President Volodymyr Zelensky before it becomes a law.
Now, Ukraine, it has over 40 million soldiers in its rank at the moment. These are men and women who are at war with another state.
Well, they face bombing, missiles and bloodshed on a regular basis. But what happens when one gets wounded in action and is forced to return to civilian life? Our next report brings you the journey back.
Inside a boxing ring, Alexander Revtyuk jabs with his right arm. But there is no swing from the left. 8 months ago, he lost his left arm and most of his left leg in mine blasts while fighting in Ukraine.
Imagine you're a newborn without an arm and a leg. You've got some knowledge from before, but beyond that, you must get to know the world from scratch.
Only 2 years ago, he had enjoyed a comfortable life abroad as an electronics technician before he returned to Ukraine to sign up and fight the Russian invasion. Revtyuk, who now has a prosthetic leg, intends to leave the army and return to a civilian life.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Look for a way out. There is a path through the thorns to the stars. This is my motto.
Revtyuk is one of tens of thousands of Ukrainian combat amputees. A co-founder of Princip, a human rights organization representing soldiers, estimates that between 20,000 and 50,000 soldiers have become amputees since Russia launched a full-scale invasion in February 2022. Many say that budget constraints, social taboos, and a lack of job opportunities make the transition to civilian life more difficult. Ukraine's Veteran Affairs Ministry declined to give official data on the number of soldiers who had lost limbs. It did not respond to criticism that it wasn't doing enough to support amputees once they re-entered society after receiving rehabilitation with prosthetic limbs. Revtyuk lost his limbs in June during last summer's counter-offensive. He underwent surgery and rehabilitation provided by the state. Recently, he visited his family in Nizhin, northeast of Kiev. His grandmother had not seen him since his arm and leg were torn off.
I thank God that you remained alive. I am grateful to volunteers that they remember you. You are strong.
These are the people who believe in you more than in themselves. They inspire you. And when you see them smiling, this is already a result.
As he begins his journey into civilian life, the boxing enthusiast is trying to make his name as a motivational coach for others in his position.
Frankly speaking, I'm happy that I still have my strong side, my right arm and my right leg. I didn't sustain any injuries to my head. My entire spine is practically healthy. Actually, prostheses can get me back to normal life. If this is the price I paid for our future, I don't see any issues with that.
Myanmar is in a state of turmoil. After weeks of fighting between military personnel and rebel groups, anti-junta groups have now claimed control over the critical border town of Myavari.
Myanmar's National Unity Government spokesperson said that the KNU-led Joint Resistance Forces captured the remaining military base in the border town. This after around 200 military personnel withdrew to a bridge connecting to Thailand. The junta is facing resistance on multiple fronts.
The critical border town of Myavari would provide the rebel groups direct access to parts of central Myanmar. This is the latest in a series of rebel wins. The military has already lost control of Myanmar's border areas with India, China and Bangladesh.
Long queues of people could be seen on the Thailand-Myanmar border as the crossing in the area remains open for civilians. The ongoing violence has forced thousands to flee from their homes, while usually around 2,000 people cross into Thailand's Mae Sot from Myanmar in a day. In the last few days, the number has been around 4,000, according to immigration officials.
Yes, the situation in Myawaddy is okay. But if we go further, they are still shooting.
Thailand has stepped up security on its border, with Thai Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin warning that recent fighting should not spill into his country's airspace. Thailand remains neutral in the Myanmar conflict, which began after the military deposed an elected civilian government in a 2021 coup.
All right, moving on now. Former NFL star O.J. Simpson has died. He was 76 years old.
Well, he passed away after a battle with cancer, and his demise was announced by his family. Simpson was regarded as one of the greatest running backs of all time. He enjoyed successful stints at the San Francisco 49ers and Buffalo Bills after spending a decade in the NFL playing for the Buffalo Bills and San Francisco 49ers.
In 1994, he was accused of murdering his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman after they were found stabbed to death outside her LA home.
Simpson pleaded not guilty, and after a high-profile trial that lasted nearly a year, he was acquitted by the jury. It was called the trial of the century, and perhaps this is the reason why he's best known even now. This is what made him famous all over the world. A civil lawsuit from the victims' families found him responsible for wrongful death and battery, ordering him to pay $33.5 million in damages.
His death has sent shockwaves, garnering mixed reactions from everywhere.
So I'll say this, our thoughts are with his families during this difficult time, obviously with his family and loved ones. And I'll say this, I know that they have asked for some privacy, and so we're going to respect that. I'll just leave it there.
Was hated like
with murder, so although I don't like to see the death of another human being, I'm not shedding any tears, and I feel for the Goldman family, for all those who were impacted by his crime. He was found guilty later, but initially he was not found guilty, and that shows the perversion of justice and what could happen when one has the kind of money to spend on the lawyer team that he had.
Yeah, so my reaction to OJ passing, good. Not going to miss him.
How do you think the wife...
I don't have any personal animus to him. I just think I don't have any hatred toward him, but I think he murdered his wife and he got away with it, and then I guess the police got even with him in that thing in Las Vegas. But like I say, I don't have any animus toward him, but I would say, as a citizen here, no particular loss. Sorry to see anybody die, but I'm sure some people out there are missing his wife as well.
After retirement from the football field, Simpson moved into acting. He appeared in various films and TV shows as well. Now, TikTokers, they found a new trend to be obsessed over.
Well, a 1980s trend called seasonal color analysis is taking over everyone's feed. Seasonal color analysis, which started doing the rounds on social media in 2023, has exploded on TikTok this year. The analysis helps a person determine what colors of clothing or makeup suit them best. And the color palette is decided after taking into consideration a person's hair, skin and eye color.
Now, according to seasonal color analysis, individuals can be classified into summer, spring, autumn or winter, depending on their natural look. Each season also has various subcategories such as light, soft, clear, deep and true.
The trend believes now wrong colors can draw attention to a person's uneven skin tone. Now, this is what is believed, and wrinkles as well as give them a dull appearance. Now, on the other hand, harmonious colors have the ability to enhance the person's natural beauty.
The analysis is not just a viral phenomenon but also a lucrative business. In fact, a color analysis session can range from $200 to about $800. Much of today's color analysis has its roots in traditional color theory from the 19th century. With that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. We will be back after this short break. On the other side, during a visit to North Korea's main central university, Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un says unstable geopolitical situations surrounding his country may mean that now is the time to be more prepared for war than ever.
Also on the other side, Apple sends a fresh round of security notifications to some of its users in India along with 91 countries. This as the tech giant suspects Apple Infra may be a possible victim of mercenary spyware attacks. All this and lots more on the other side. Stay tuned.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia-Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
On the next episode of World of Africa, African leaders and global dignitaries mark 30th anniversary of Rwandan genocide as French President Emmanuel Macron receives backlash for stating that France and its allies could have stopped the 1994 genocide but lacked the will to do so. South African government goes hard on corruption just weeks ahead of national polls. Country's parliament speaker is forced to resign. And in an effort to remember and honor Nigerian schoolgirls still missing 10 years after their abduction by Islamist insurgents in Chibok, a film titled Statues Also Breathe is screened. Watch World of Africa at these times on WION. World is one.
The biggest democratic exercise on the planet ever. Decoding the multiple colors of this multi-dimensional, multi-layered spectacle. WION deciphers the images and the hues. Sifts real performance from rhetoric and noise, claims and counterclaims, populist pitches and hidden truths. Untangling, unraveling this celebration of democracy.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. In the first half hour, of course, we brought you a quick roundup of all that's happened in the Trilateral Summit between US, Philippines and Japan. Let's get you up to date with everything else that's happening around the globe. This is World DNA. Here are the headlines.
Israel is keeping up its war in Gaza but is also preparing for scenarios in other areas, says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, amid concerns that Iran is preparing to strike Israel in response to the killing of senior Iranian commanders.
Protesters gather in Tel Aviv to continue to press the Israeli government and war cabinet to reach a deal with Hamas over the hostages, fearing that time is running out for the remaining ones.
US, Japan and the Philippines hold the first ever trilateral summit, with all three leaders signaling that many more meetings would follow in the years to come.
The United States defense commitments to Japan and to the Philippines are ironclad.
Biden says US support for Philippines-Japan defense is ironclad amid growing China provocations. The US is expected to announce joint military efforts to push back on Beijing's stepped-up pressure on Manila in the disputed South China Sea.
Major Maldives tourism body announces that it will hold road shows across key Indian cities in an apparent bid to woo Indian tourists back.
(2020) US Open champions Bryson DeChambeau holds a one-shot lead over world number 1 Scottie Scheffler after a weather-affected round 1 at the Masters. 27 players, including Tiger Woods, will have finished their opening round today.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said unstable geopolitical situations surrounding his country mean now is the time to be more prepared for war than ever.
Now, the North Korean leader made the remark as he inspected the country's main military university. The remarks also come on the same day as rival South Korea's parliamentary elections, in which the governing party suffered a major defeat. North Korea in recent months has stepped up its accusations against South Korea and its ally the United States for what it called provoking military tensions by conducting war maneuvers and holding military drills with greater intensity and scale.
In March, Kim also ordered heightened war preparations after inspecting troops at a major military operations base in the country's west.
Kim Jong-un also supervised the test launch of a new hypersonic intermediate-range ballistic missile using solid fuel, which analysts said would bolster the North's ability to deploy missiles more effectively than liquid fuel variants.
Since the election of South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol in 2022, tensions between the two Koreas have been intensifying, with the North declaring the South as its principal enemy.
In response to Yoon's hardline stance towards the North, Kim Jong-un ordered the scrapping of agencies dedicated to reunification and outreach and threatened war over even 0.001 mm of territorial infringement. All right, let's take a look at the developments coming in from the world of technology, starting with tech giant Apple, which has sent a fresh round of threat notifications to some of its users in India, along with 91 other countries. Why? Well, the company has said that they might have been possible victims of a mercenary spyware attack. What's interesting to note here is that Apple has dropped the word state-sponsored to describe the attack. The Cupertino-based company had previously used the word state-sponsored to refer to such malware attacks in the past. The company sent out alert notification emails to possible victims.
The content of the email reads, and I'm quoting here, "Today's notification is being sent to targeted users in 92 countries, and to date, we have notified users in over 150 countries in total. According to the notification email, mercenary spyware attacks are rare and more sophisticated than regular cyber criminal activity or malware."
New rules adopted by the US Federal Communications Commission promise to shed light on internet pricing with broadband consumer labels, much like nutrition labels on food. These broadband labels aim to clarify what you are paying for when you sign up for an internet service. The labels will provide straightforward information about costs, performance, and hidden fees to maintain transparency.
The service providers will have to give details such as monthly prices, potential price changes, internet speed, and more. Moreover, internet providers will be required to display these labels at the point of sale online or in stores. These rules are part of the Biden administration's efforts to tackle opaque and misleading fee structures across various industries. While most providers will start showing these labels in April, smaller firms have time till the 10th of October to comply.
Meta has announced plans to test features on Instagram that are aimed at protecting teens from harmful content and potential scammers. The new feature will blur messages containing nudity. It will utilize on-device machine learning to analyze images within Instagram's direct messages. The new feature will get automatically updated for users who are under the age of 18. Meanwhile, adult Instagram users will have to manually select the desired option. Notably, this protection also extends to end-to-end encrypted chats, and Meta is also developing a technology to identify accounts involved in sextortion scams. The company is testing pop-up messages to warn users who may have interacted with such accounts.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That's what Neil Armstrong said upon landing on the moon. And now it looks like it is time for the robots to take that step. This is Spirit, a robot that is being trained to walk on the moon. Scientists are testing the quadrupedal robot in the rugged terrain of the Oregon mountain hood in preparation for future missions in space. Spirit robot is part of the Legged Autonomous Surface Science in Analog Environments project, commonly known as LASSIE project.
Moving forward to missions that are going to occur on our moon, we're going to have humans and robots really for the first time on planetary missions working side by side. And so what the LASSIE project is doing is really looking forward to that time and considering how should humans and robots collaborate for exploration of planets, particularly where should they go to collect data.
It won't be wrong to say that in a few years, we'll see robonauts conducting successful space missions.
All right, moving on now. Alphabet, the parent company of Google, is inching closer to a $2 trillion value.
That's equal to the entire GDP of Canada. And this surge comes after a period of investor doubt surrounding Alphabet's artificial intelligence strategy. Earlier stumbles with consumer-facing AI products, particularly their model Gemini, caused some to question Alphabet's AI leadership. However, the company has managed to turn things around. A recent cloud computing event served as a turning point. Alphabet showcased a more mature version of Gemini, specifically designed for enterprise applications. This demonstration, coupled with the news that Apple might be interested in using the technology, has restored investor confidence. JP Morgan Chase predicts that Gemini integration could lead to a 20% in revenue increase for the platform. Alphabet's stock is trading at a discount compared to competitors like Microsoft, and this attractive valuation combined with the recent progress is a recipe for a potential boom. With its AI strategy back on track, Alphabet appears well positioned to reach that coveted $2 trillion market cap. India has emerged as a key market for global automakers due to a surge in demand and buoyant consumer sentiment.
Of course, sales are surging across segments. So what do the numbers suggest about the state of the Indian economy? Take a look at our next report to find out.
India's auto sales are not just revving up. They're hitting the accelerator and signaling a promising trajectory for the country's economy. Data from the Federation of Automobile Dealers Associations reveals the retail sales of automobiles surged by 3.14% overall in March compared to the same period last fiscal year. One of the standout performers in this automotive symphony is the electric vehicle segment, which witnessed a remarkable surge in sales across all categories in the last fiscal year. Retail sales of electric passenger vehicles soared by a staggering 91%. Reflecting a growing preference for cleaner and sustainable transportation options among Indian consumers. Leading the charge is Tata Motors, emerging as the leader in this segment and showcasing a remarkable 66% growth compared to the previous fiscal year. In this automotive journey, rural India emerges as a crucial protagonist. Despite facing uncertainties and concerns, rural demand continues to play a pivotal role in driving auto sales forward. The migration of laborers back to their hometowns, coupled with an ever-expanding urban landscape, has fueled the demand for three-wheelers, but the demand for two-wheelers and passenger cars remains low. But it's not all about electric dreams and rural roads. Luxury car sales are also cruising towards success. BMW Group India's stellar performance in the first quarter of 2024 with a record-breaking growth of over 51% exemplifies the high-octane demand for luxury vehicles in the country. With models like the BMW X7 leading the pack, the luxury car market is experiencing a turbocharged expansion. Vikram Pava, India's BMW Group CEO, spoke to WION earlier regarding India's auto expansion.
I think it will rapidly catch up because if you look at from the worldwide standard, our consumptions are pretty low. Right, so there is absolutely that headroom for India to grow. And like I said, there is a cultural shift that's going to happen with the younger generation coming into this consumption zone, let me put it that way, because if you look at 56% of Indian population is below 35. And the real consumption kicks in at 35. So next 2 decades, I see a huge growth potential for India.
While auto sales are a testament to India's growth story, there are still a few sub-markets that are yet to catch up. But a good monsoon and government policies are expected to fuel demand in the rural sector soon, signaling an economic engine firing on all cylinders. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.